everybody, to another live stream of the Sports Refuge. I am Earl Holland here with a big panel. You know, the biggest thing that the theme of this episode is the Baseball Hall of Fame. The announcements are coming out on the 26th of January. And one of the things that we always talk about, I know a few people I've always discussed it with, is what makes a Hall of Famer? How can you tell when someone is a Hall of Famer? And I feel like with so much discussion going on, especially because there hasn't been much really to talk about except for, you know, football and COVID and everything else, I decided to bring in a roundtable panel to get their thoughts on who should be in the Hall of Fame, you know, fan thoughts, as well as to find out why they love baseball so much. So starting off, my first guest who's here, you've seen him on the show a few times, you know, and he is the host of the Movies in the Meal podcast. This is Ben Penserga. Ben, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Just happy to be here, and actually happy to see and talk to a lot of friends that I haven't seen or talked to in a long time. So this is fun.
I really appreciate you being here. Another guest to the show. You guys have seen his episodes before, and he's been on a couple of tandem episodes. My cousin Therran Dennis, aka Sparky McGriddle Cakes. Therran, how are you doing?
How's it going, y'all?
And then my next guest, you've
I'm
seen
good,
him.
I'm good. I'm feeling groovy. How's everyone feeling?
We're all doing all right, Therran. Appreciate it. Our next guest, someone you've seen, he was on TV a lot, and as his
that is some delay right there.
Oh yeah, his Twitter profile says that he is basically, he went a little wild on Sports Jeopardy, and a lot of you guys may have seen his feats. This is Vinny Veronica, who, again, you've seen a previous episode, and he was also on a recent part of our compilation episode of the teams that did not make the NFL playoffs. Vinny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Earl. I always enjoy an annual discussion of why Harold Baines in the Hall of Fame. I'm doing good otherwise.
Thank you so much, Vinny. Another guest you've seen on the show before. Yes, he is a diehard San Francisco 49ers fan, but, you know, living in Delaware, he is a Baltimore Orioles fan. Jeff Scott. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Again, thank you for being here. Another guest that you've seen on here, tell me if you heard this before. She and her sister, Nicole, were on a recent episode where they discussed their fandom of sports and just everything under the sun. Ronnie Day, Veronica Day, what do you prefer?
Veronica. Ronnie, doesn't matter.
Again, thank you for being here, Ronnie. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. And now my next guest as well, someone I first met when I was covering minor league baseball with the Delmarva Shorebirds. He's been all around, and he's very unique because he is a Miami Dolphins fan in Pittsburgh. Brandon Burns, how are you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good tonight. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get chatting some baseball tonight.
Oh, yeah, and I'm glad you guys are here because, you know, especially – and there really wasn't much to talk about, especially during the COVID pandemic shortened season. And I always thought this is a good idea to bring out to the forefront because these are debates that all the time, all of us, about who is a Hall of Famer and what consists of being a Hall of Famer. And I'm glad to have you guys here because I wanted to open up the floor to you guys and give your thoughts on everything that's going on. And the first thing I wanted to ask you guys as we go around, and we'll start from Ben, work our way all the way down to Brandon, is to you, why do you love baseball so much, and what does the game mean to you?
Well, like baseball was actually the first sport I actually started following when I was a kid, and the Orioles were the first team I started rooting for as a kid. So just being first and combing through all the baseball cards that my brother had from like the late 70s and the 80s, and then getting a baseball card collecting myself back in the early 90s, and just getting sucked into the sport. And we all kind of gravitate. I mean, I was never gonna play professionally or whatever, but you gravitate to different sides of the sport. Obviously, I still love the Orioles, even though they just rip my heart out a lot of the times. But I still love the game, and I guess my main pull probably is still kind of uniforms and hats and things like that, which I still have a collection and probably have a weird esoteric obsession with. But I mean, the Orioles of baseball will forever be my first team, my first sport that I'll follow, and that'll be the last ones I quit whenever I quit sports, or if that ever happens. The Orioles will be the last ones.
And Therran, how about you? What makes you a fan of baseball? Why do you love it so much?
Oh man, what's there not to love? Like Ben, baseball was really the first sport I began to follow, and it was because of you and Eddie, of course. But it was also the first sport that I played recreationally with others. I love the so not to trivialize life into a game per se, but I think baseball is most indicative of what we endure in life, because it's ultimately about how you handle failure, and I love the team concept, as far as you being the best player, or I guess in the grand scheme of life, the best person you can be, as far as being responsible, accountable, and being able to contribute to the whole of society, the community, which as a player, the whole the team. So I like how you balance, or rather, I love the duality of those two perspectives, from I guess from the game, or to the game, or of the game rather, both as a player and as a fan. We all have dreams. I want to be a major league outfielder or ball player of some sort, but reality kicks in. But you always have fanhood to hold on to, and nowadays when I look at the game, I just appreciate how good these guys are, man. And I tell you what, the game is just full of talented, I mean, not to say the game hasn't always been full of talented players, but I mean, as far as my recollection is concerned, for as long as I've been keeping up with the game, you have so many notable names, so many reasons to follow all the teams nowadays. In addition to having guys, following guys through your fantasy squads. But yeah, these guys, they make the game look good and fun to watch. It's really
Vinny,
cool.
what about
So
you?
and as a fan, of course, you live vicariously through them.
Yeah, Vinny, what about you? What is it about baseball that you love, and how did you find the game?
Oh man, it's easy. It's the hats. I mean, the hats, right? It sounds corny, but it's romantic. Baseball's timeless. There's no clock, at least for now. At least there's no clock. It's timeless. It's the one place where you can take a souvenir home.
For now, yeah.
It connects generations. Baseball is numbers. We all know what 714 is, or 755, or now 762. We know 3,000 hits. We know what that means. We know the 406 batting average. And it's baseball is more of a regional sport now than a national pastime, but we all have connections to our teams. I'm a Yankees fan, but the only reason I'm a Yankees fan and out of up in New Jersey, because I was able to watch all the Yankees games growing up and being 7 years old, and the Yankees win that. But yeah, I mean, it's the only sport where anything can happen. Truly, the impossible can happen. Quoting Vin Scully.
And Jeff, to you, what is it about baseball that you love, and how did you get drawn to it?
I mean, baseball, what can you say about it? It's America's pastime. I grew up, playing because my father, got me into it. Of course, I was drawn to the Orioles because, they're the regional team. Ended up playing with you, Earl, playing against a bunch of different people growing up. You, me, Eddie, and Brian, and a bunch of us went to the Shorebirds remember the one time we were there and I jumped over 3 rows of seats to get a foul ball. And Eddie famously quoted it as Shamu jumping over the seats to get it. And oh dear God, I think Therran was there as well. And, yeah, it was something, and
I think it was.
and we always had a good time just going to the Shorebirds. I mean, we always go to the Orioles, but and I love collecting bobbleheads. I don't know if I have as many as Ben. I don't know where my collection is up. Now. I mean, I guess I should have set out in my man cave. That could have got a better picture. But for me, it's always been like a family tradition. You play and go to the games with everybody. And before COVID hit, my daughter, she's almost 2 now. She was there as a baby, but I mean, it's something. I drag Marlene to the games. She might read a book every once in a while, but she at least knows who the players on the Orioles are. I mean, it's something you can do with the entire family and not break the bank, at least, unless you grab a beer, which is $15. Then you're like, well, that's your. I mean, I always carry my fan fist. That thing's just about demolished now, but it's still going strong. And I mean, you can always go and just have a good time. I mean, what's the traditional thing? Get a box of Cracker Jacks, a hot dog, and a cold drink. Sit back and have fun.
Yeah, no, and there's no truer words about that, of course. Ronnie, what is it about baseball that you've been drawn to and that you love about it?
Kind of similar to everybody else is saying. I mean, I've been a baseball fan since I was very, very little. So it's kind of just been a part of my life. So it's like, it's just something that has just been a part of my life since I was little. And it's like, it's like Ben said, it was the first sport that I really got into. So that was it. And then, baseball is unique. I mean, your team can be down like 10-0 and you might turn it off in frustration. You turn it back in an hour and they're like chipping away. Next thing you know, your team wins on a game, a bottom of the ninth inning game-winning home run or whatever. And that's something you don't get in other sports because you're, with other sports, you're limited by the time clock. So, baseball is that sport that anything can happen in baseball. When you think you've seen it all, something else happens. And it's just fun. I mean, you go into a baseball game, it's so much fun. You're out there in the field. It's, like with football, football's in the wintertime. And I mean, it's a little bit in the fall too, but football's in the winter, basketball's indoors, but baseball's outside in the summer. It's like, unless you get a really bad rain delay or whatever, it's with occasional snow. But it's beautiful when you go there. The ballpark's beautiful. Camden Yards is absolutely, every time you go on that, it's like, every time I go there, it's like I'm there the first time. The field's beautiful, and it's just a really, great game. And it's something that I probably will always invest in. And like, even with the Orioles, how frustrating they make me, especially after they didn't re-sign Adam Jones. It's like, I always go back to the Orioles no matter what. So it's just, I don't know, something that'll always be in my life.
And Brandon, how about you?
For me, obviously, I started off playing t-ball all the way up through high school. So, when I was especially looking for colleges, sports was kind of my thing. So I know I went into the sport management field thinking that one day I'm going to be the next Theo Epstein. I grew up, in Phillies country, and I was a Mets fan. So, I was always going against the grain, from that start. But, I grew up playing those video games, making all those ridiculous trades with the computer and, assembling those teams. So, I had aspirations to one day maybe be a general manager or an agent. But then, I really got into, for me, meeting, Earl and Ben at the Shorebirds, I could have never thought that my internship of, being Sherman the Shorebird and then being the on-field MC and really, seeing the business side of things and, selling tickets to the Eastern Shore, really brought joy for me and seeing the backbone of that community aspect, which everybody has kind of already mentioned, and really, driving home that point for, not only for us, but for future generations to really love that game.
Well said. I know one of the things that we're going to discuss, of course, as the show goes on, is what defines a Hall of Famer. We'll go real quick about that around, starting with Ben. To you, what defines a Hall of Famer?
I think it's already been mentioned, but baseball is like the most kind of numbers defining sport, especially for the Hall of Fame. 3,000 hits, like we said, 3,000 hits, 300 wins, even though that's probably not going to happen again. 500 home runs. Those are the benchmarks. And if you can get there or close, you're probably a Hall of Famer, which you can't. I mean, there's no magic benchmark for basketball or football, right? I mean, we can't be like, oh, Antoine Jameson, he just needs to score like 30 more points and then he'll have 20,000 for a career, and that pretty much will seal him getting in the Hall of Fame. It doesn't work like that. But at the same time, it's just like, I think the older generations, it was more like it was a sight test. Like, you just had a feeling. You're like, oh, this guy is a Hall of Famer. And now with the sabermetrics era coming in, and people, now you have the numbers to quantify it as well. And that works both ways. I think there are people that maybe, like when I was growing up, people thought I would have thought was a Hall of Famer, but maybe the numbers don't prove it. But then the other way, you can use numbers to get guys like like Tim Raines or Harold Baines. I know he's kind of the most iffiest one, but I mean, he's kind of a local guy, and like at least you can parse through the numbers now and kind of like just make a case either way. So but like for me, I'm still a little bit more old school, and it's the sight test to me and just a gut feeling more so, and then the numbers will just kind of prove me right, I guess. So that's my take.
Therran, how about you?
Yeah, I'm largely with Ben in that regard. I try to remember how graceful these guys made the game look, especially in big time games. One guy we're gonna go over. We're gonna talk about, I'm sure, pretty soon. Curt Schilling. It's like every postseason game I watched, and now remember, so I'm 32, so I don't really know the '93 Curt Schilling and how that run went. I'd have to go down through the archives to really to check that out. But I just remember from watching him in the 01 series when I was rooting for the D-backs. And then watch him in 04 during that run, where I think he became a GOAT during that stretch, especially having to endure the horrors of going through whatever was going on in his ankle, and through the bleeding sock, that whole thing. But it was like it was really like watching like an epic, like every time he was on the mound. It really was, and that excitement, I mean, and not every player is going to, experience it the way that Schilling did. But I try to like remember that excitement, and I think of, well, how's this guy, made me feel anywhere close to that. Well, even like while watching him, like say like during the dog days of August, where the simplicity of an at bat, like how exciting, like did you make that at bat? Like did you fight, like were you able to configure, like were you able to get into the pitcher's mind, like were you able, it's like how were you able to hang in there? It's that whole like enduring like the struggles you go through the daily, so that's what I try to keep in mind. And in addition to like I was saying, I agree with Ben about the benchmarks, 3,000 hits, 500 homers, 300 average. I may take that down to 280. I don't know. I feel like, if you can finish anywhere between 280, 303, you're good. Well, if you can finish at least 280, I feel like you were a solid hitter. But yeah, like you look for consistency too in that regard.
Vinny, how about you? What makes a Hall of Famer?
I think the joy and curse in this decision is that it's purely subjective. As you talked about, the magic numbers, 3,000 hits, 500 home runs, 300 wins, or how many Cy Young awards, like your playoffs. But a lot of it too is a wow factor, right? Like there's some players that it's like he was God gifted. He would have been a Hall of Famer undoubtedly. Same with Roger Clemens, and there's that whole side. Unfortunately, we have to talk about. But there's some players that really wow you. It could be Mariano Rivera. He's like the close clutch player in the ninth inning. 2001 notwithstanding, unfortunately. And Randy Johnson, same thing. Like, did you want to be facing Randy Johnson with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball heading up to your head? Like John Kruk and Larry Walker were like, no, we're not going to do this in the All-Star game.
Or you don't want to be a bird
really
facing
comes down
Randy
to
Johnson.
Oh yeah, no, I still can't believe that was Kyle.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
No, that was great. Classic. That I think that the bird and like him shouting the New York cameraman when he like joined the game. These were like my highlights of his off the field encounters. But yeah. Hot stove.
So
Be a bird
Really
facing
comes down
Randy
to, like,
Johnson.
what do you feel makes a Hall of Famer, Jeff?
Besides the numbers, you have to have attitude, There be sportsmanship, I'm not going to mention Cal, but what about Ichiro? I mean, I was watching a video of him the other day. It's also talent and raw ability. I mean, I don't know if you knew Baseballer, the Facebook site. They showed a video of Ichiro throwing a ball at the foul pole from home plate, and it hit the foul pole right where he threw it at. I mean, it's more than that, but putting the effort in day by day, the raw, just doing what you have to do. I mean, there's some people like Griffey that had the God-given talent, and go out. He still does what he had to do. We'll forget the, falling asleep in the dugout. I mean, not the dugout. Yeah. You know what I mean? But, people like that, there's no competition. But then, you have players that I don't feel deserve stuff like that, or maybe not deserve it, or feel like they're – who am I thinking of? You and I were talking about it the other day, Earl. Gary Sheffield. I saw something that said, was he the top batter of the 90s? And I discussed that with one of my coworkers. He said he was maybe one of the top 10, but he was not the first. But he always had a piss poor attitude. That's one of the reasons why I did not like him. Always running people over or pushing them down, or it's just, yeah, he was good, but is he Hall of Fame worthy? I don't know. I mean, you go along with the stats, you have to, like God, he played for the running back for the Seattle Seahawks. He says, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Marshawn Lynch, he was great. Is he Hall of Fame worthy? Yeah. It's just, it's more than ability. It's that you have to have that it factor. I mean, Jeter was talented, but he also had a great attitude. Like my dad said, always used to say to me, during baseball games when I watch with them, I've told you this, fundamental baseball. It's more than flashy attitude, two hands, run the play out. That's one of the things I hate to see is, when somebody's run the play out, put in effort, hustle. It's more than just, Manny got that, big payday, threw it $364 million or whatever it was. I mean, just because you get the big payday doesn't mean you stop doing it.
Yeah, Manny Machado you're talking about, of course.
Yeah. I still want to see you hustling. Now that you got that big payday, you should be hustling even more. I mean, what it means to me is I go to the game to enjoy watching you play, not seeing you be as flashy as you can be, because that's when you start to make more errors. But then again, that's what I think of a Hall of Famer.
Ronnie, what about you? What do you feel makes a Hall of Famer?
Besides the numbers, that's a huge thing. I think also consistency. You want somebody who, like on a consistent basis, they came up. And I'm not saying you had to hit 40 plus home runs a year, but just somebody that day in and day out is going to be there for your team. And I think also what they contributed to their team. Are they that player? Like I like to say, it's like if you put a highlight reel of a team, they're there is a type of person who's going to be featured in the highlight reel, and not just home runs, but like, I know this is a dying art, but like putting down a bunt, to sacrifice your team. I mean, sacrifice for yourself for your team, or running out a play, like you said. Also, just if you're a defensive player, are you doing that what you need? Like if it's the bottom of the ninth and your team is, there's the other team's making a comeback. Did you save that run? So I think it has to do with, and also I think back like what he said as well, like it's your attitude. I think when you have somebody who is an ambassador for the game, I think they definitely should be in there, because you have people, who just go out there and you can know that they truly enjoy the game and they love it, and they're not just doing it for the money and fame. And I think, not that I'm not saying these younger guys aren't going to be like that, but I think when you get people like Machado and Harper, they get these big bonuses. They don't have to work for anything. They came up when they were 18, 19, 20 years old, and it's not even that, when they used to come up, I know rookies used to have to kind of work their way up. They couldn't, the small things like they couldn't play their music in the clubhouse. They had to do this. It's like they don't make these guys work for anything. So I think that the whole, when you look at somebody like Tony Gwynn, Cal Ripken, they played all those years for one team. They gave their heart to that team. They didn't leave, and we know Cal could have left. Cal could have left. He was sure he could have got money in another market, but he and Tony Gwynn stayed. They played their whole career, and when you look at those two, that they played it for the love of the game. And I think that is something that stands out in my mind when you think of Hall of Famer, and I know it's hard to kind of be like, well, does this person deserve because they're not, necessarily a nice person, but it's like that does factor in, because you want to see the good guys win. You want to see the ones who, did the best for the game and promoted the game. Like, Ken Griffey Jr., yeah, he was raw talent and he was somebody who didn't have to work for it, but he also was a huge ambassador for the game. I think when he came in, he kind of did a spark, got people back into baseball. So I think it's like a roundabout number. It's a whole bunch of things, but I do think that, who the person is needs to really kind of factor into that.
Brandon, what about you? What do you feel makes a Hall of Famer?
Well, I think, first and foremost, as we have all kind of mentioned, numbers is a huge proponent of this. But, as we look at the Hall of Fame in general, that's the place where we're really telling the story of the 100 years of baseball. So, as I look at a Hall of Famer, I'm really looking at those players that if you take them out of their era, they're going to pale in comparison across any era. A lot of the guys that, we'll be potentially talking about later on, if you looked at them in the 90s, the 80s, even back to the 70s, or, the guys at the Veterans Committee, if you took them out of the era of baseball, would that story still be the same? Would we be at the same spot with the game as we might be today without those individuals? So, really looking, beyond, everything in that regard, that's where I really look at. And as Ben kind of mentioned, that eye test. Like, a lot of the players now, they're, hell bent on their legacy. I've never heard so many athletes talk about their legacy when they're still playing. Let people decide that when you're done. Don't be worried about that while you're in your second, your third, your fourth year. Let your career play out. Then let's make that decision, which I think that's where we're kind of at with making this Hall of Fame debate.
And that's a good point. And I feel like things have changed over the years. Maybe that's a generational thing where people are already trying to, we always just say, okay, this guy could be a first ballot Hall of Famer down the road. Who knows? So many things can change. You could be on a great trend at up to 30 and then completely fall off. And that'll be one of the people we're going to talk about as well, referring to Andrew Jones. But one of the things I wanted to get to, it's a selection process. We'll go around this really quickly just to get a little more stuff in. Selection process. What do you think about it? I know that in the past they've cut down the years of eligibility from 15 years to 10 before, and writers can only pick 10. But do you feel, starting with Ben, do you feel that what do you feel about the selection process, and do you think there should be changes, and if so, what?
I don't mind actually the cut down between 10 and 15 year eligibility, because that's the thing. We talk about eye test. We know if you're a Hall of Famer or not. for the most part, I don't know if an extra 5 years will do it. Now, 10 years still allows you to make a case. And as we look at baseball differently through like sabermetrics, and again, like Tim Raines is a good example, probably, right? As someone who we're like, okay, he's good. But is he better than Ricky Henderson? No. So they should be in the Hall of Fame. But then when you actually break down his numbers and as we kind of really cut through it and just about his value to the game and like what a big disruptor he was and what a big factor he was, like an actual game day to day. Okay, it builds, the momentum builds, but I just don't know if you need 15 years. There are a lot of people I look on. You sent us the who's going to be on the ballot for the first year. There are a lot of guys that I like, and there are a lot of guys. If I was playing kind of fantasy GM, or like in their prime, I would have loved to have them for the Orioles, but they're probably just going to be below the cut, and I'm happy. I don't mind seeing them get cut right away or whatever, because we still have a lot of good players out there. This year is kind of like the pause before we get to the real. We're really getting to a bigger class of guys coming through for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So it's just like this is a good year to really take a hard look at those also rans, I guess, and see if we can get them in before, because it's just going to get clogged. And it happens sometimes. I remember that class when it was like George Brett and Nolan Ryan and who was the other one?
Robin Yount.
Yeah, Robin Yount. And Carlton Fisk had to wait a year. And Carlton Fisk is as much the Hall of Famer as any of those guys, especially in the catching position. But you just gotta wait. I don't know. But to circle back to my main point, if you're a Hall of Famer, you'll get it. They'll figure it out in 10 years. You don't have to have 15. So I don't mind. Again, I don't mind that. And if you're a real special case, then you still have the Veterans Committee and guys like Harold Baines and we're going to talk about Marvin Miller, Ted Simmons. They'll get in. You'll get your recognition. So,
Grant, what about you?
Well, to be quite honest, I don't necessarily pay attention to the process as much as I pay attention to the class of players whom are considered, or the new class worth considering. But to Ben's point, I think, and just thinking back on my my hardcore baseball watching days from years ago, who's a Hall of Famer. I think nowadays, as I was saying, the guys collectively are just more talented, and so it's becoming harder and harder I think as a player to stand out Hall of Fame wise, which I think overall is good for the game because, as I was saying earlier, it gives you reason to look all around, to look at every team, to see what every franchise is working on and who's going to represent each franchise to each respective future. But no, I mean I think 10 years is fine. Again, like. I don't know how many numbers you have to sift through to sort of line them up arrow wise or whatnot. I mean, I guess you just know and you just kind of go with that, So I think the process is fine, and I just think of the players.
Benny, what about you?
Yeah, I think the 10 years. 10 years is fine, but I think there's still some flaws in how the voting happens. Like, you have certain sports writers who just will never vote for somebody on the first pick, so they'll never have a unanimous decision. You also don't have open ballots, so it would be nice if they can explain why they picked who. I think a couple years ago, Dan Levitard, he gave his ballot to Deadspin, and Deadspin just allowed the people to vote, and they had a really good ballot. So that's just to show, baseball fans can vote as well. And to their credit, Baseball Writers of America, they did get rid of people who just aren't covering baseball anymore. But there's also like new media coming in. You don't have to be strictly print now. You could be working for TV, Bleacher. You're going to see changes as well. You're going to see players that may have not fit the old mold of a Hall of Famer, which was just strictly numbers, or maybe they weren't nice to the media. Maybe they won't care anymore. And so I look forward to seeing what the changes are going to be. But it's ever evolving. Like I said earlier, like 15 years I worked for Tim Raines, or maybe Jim Rice. I think was another one who got in on this last year. But if they can't make it in 10 years, you do have the Veterans Committee, which I think has gotten better. But unfortunately, we all know the Veterans Committee seems to be an old boys club where it's like who you know, not like depending on how talented you are. If you get lucky in that. So they're working. I think they're going to work on changing it to make it better. But that's a good thing about the Hall of Fame. I think they're the most selective of all the sports. Like other sports, you'll see like 5, 6 always inducted every year. Like baseball, it means something to get Hall of Famer.
Jeff, what about you?
Like Therran said, sometimes I don't follow so much the process as I do pay attention to who gets in.
You guys want a minute?
But sometimes just because someone who was, say, like Ben said, Carlton Fisk didn't get in the first time. I mean, even though he is a phenomenal player, they're always next year. I mean, like we found out this year, who's I believe somebody you were sharing. I mean, Roger Clemens. We found out, he was on steroids. I mean, he didn't even need to use them. And like Barry Bonds, do they even deserve to go in? I mean, in my opinion, no. But if they get in, I think it's a travesty. But I think what Vinny said, allow the fans to vote. I think that would be a great idea, but that's just my opinion.
Ronnie, to you, what do you feel the process should be? Should they change it or?
I don't know. I think you can always work to improve anything. And I for one was okay with the 15 years because I feel like it kind of gives people who are kind of missing it, maybe gives them that last extra push. But like they said, 10 years does, seem sufficient. I don't know I kind of feel like fans should maybe have an input, but at the same time, then does it become a popularity contest? So then are you really, if you open up to fans, is it really going to be the best people? So I don't know. It's just one of those things I think you have to kind of, I don't know. They're working on it. So I think right now it's okay. I do think there could be some, some glitches that could be worked out, but that's with anything. But I think, as time goes on, it'll work itself out.
And Brandon, to you, what do you think about the process?
Yeah, overall, I mean, I truly think the process, as Vinny mentioned earlier, having the open ballots and really having that explanation of why individuals are voting for who they are or are not is going to be a huge thing. Especially as we're, progressing in this new technology age, thinking back to, teams used to have one beat writer that used to write for the local paper, and that's who they reported out to the AP. So, now, looking at the Pirates here locally, they have 6 guys that report out, stories, and, they might have an issue with, the right fielder or the center fielder or whatever the case may be. And a lot of those personal vendettas, have seemed to percolate with the baseball writers over the years. But, cutting down to the 15 to 10, I mean, that's an easy perspective. You can easily make that case for somebody in that 10 years. But, really, I think, open the ballot up. If you think that there's 15 Hall of Famers on a ballot, let them vote for 15. If you think there's 3, let them vote for 3. But just be able to justify that decision, if you have that opportunity. So,
and my one thing was, as it was mentioned earlier, is that someone's going to be a Hall of Famer, whether you vote for them the first year or the second year, and their stats are not changing at all at any point. It's not going to get better. There are people who are snubbed in the Hall of Fame. We can always talk about Eddie Murray. Eddie Murray, Ken Rosenthal basically had a badge of honor that he did not vote for Eddie Murray. He and Eddie Murray did not get along, and there's a belief that Ken Rosenthal was part of the group that ran Eddie Murray out of Baltimore. But that is a different story for a different time. But I mean, that is a prime example. If you have people who, and it's funny, Bob Costas, who we can all say is a baseball historian, didn't have a vote. I don't think he still does have a vote, but a guy like him should have a vote. And it took a long time for guys who are outside of traditional print media to get a shot. And I think that was my only thing. As long as you put, you let baseball bloggers who are dedicated baseball bloggers, baseball journals who cover it all the time. That's my only thing about it. But other than that, the length, I've got accustomed to 15 to 10. So I think that's something I can get used to. Just moving this on a little bit more. Sabermetrics, that's a new math, and some people consider voodoo and all this other stuff beyond the old eye tech. But what do you guys think about sabermetrics?
It's a waste of time.
Ben, what do you think?
I have mixed feelings about it. Again, I think all information that we can use to analyze and decide who the best players are, that's fine. I think that's what it should be. Personally, sometimes I don't like it when kind of the new schoolers will hate on people that I liked back in the day. Like, oh, well, he wasn't that good, blah, blah, blah. Or, the defensive metrics, blah, 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 blah. But that's just a personal thing for me. Again, if it helps actual good players get recognized and not, again, kind of eliminate what we were saying about baseball writers who might have a personal beef with somebody and not voting because they don't like them. If we have more numbers for more people to understand and make a case for that person to get in the Hall of Fame, then go for it. It's not my thing. I'll never be a guy. I still have to look up, VORP and things like that. But again, more power to you. And the more numbers we have to figure out what's the best, then yeah, sure, go for it.
I know, Brandon, you mentioned that already that you didn't get the situation, but you guys found on that just a little bit.
All right. So y'all, I'm sorry. Pardon me. My camera. I'm working on that now. But you all can hear me apparently, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Cool. I think the less numbers, the better. I just take what I see, what I see on the field. I just remember guys in moments, ranging from say at bats in the postseason to just watching how they run out, say a ground ball, or how they position themselves to throw out a guy, at home or something like that, or watching how, observing how, the rhythm of them taking a lead off of first before, stealing second or something like that. Like these are like little things, like the nuances as far as for those who've played, just things that you're taught growing up. I watch how these guys, at the major league level, execute them at the highest, and I just compare, what I see from that standpoint. So I really don't care for saber. I've never cared for sabermetrics. I'm old school. I'll go back to the days of just being there, and just going from there.
Vinny, how about you? Sabermetrics, what's your thoughts?
I'm kind of a healthy dose of sabermetrics. I think it does give more players a little bit more leverage. And yeah, like not everyone's going to be a star player. Not everyone's going to have the opportunity to go to the playoffs and to have their moment in the sun. There's some players who are all-stars every year, but, it's been the all-star game. That's all it did. And sometimes that's not enough. I think it's funny that sabermetrics have actually emphasized how good actual Hall of Fame players are. If you go to Morgan's a classic example. when he passed away earlier this year, or last year in 2020, like the thoughts were like he was probably one of the greatest second basemen ever. And not only was it his leadership on the field, his 2 MVPs, but it was the sabermetrics that really showed how valuable he was to that big red machine. And Joe Morgan, the player, actually hated Joe Morgan, the sabermetric guy. He was like, Joe Morgan would never do this. And so, there's got to be a healthy dose of it. But I do agree that, you go with your gut instinct. And I think a lot of us might feel, especially if we're old school baseball fans, we feel the same with managing. Now it's like, I kind of like a Dusty Baker manages with his gut in the same way, like a player with a gut, think of like Willie Pop Stargell, like his WAR was terrible. I think the MVP season in 79, he had like 2 WAR, but he was like a leader. He really he was the guy who everyone depended on. He's like, just hop on my back and I'll take you to the World Series. So I think, I still fall more towards the eye test, but I'm open to like sabermetrics. Like Tim Raines, like I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame. I think he was a great player. And I remember him honestly more as a Yankee because I was too young when he played for the Expos. By that time he was a role player, but it is good to see some players at least, that they're not, left in the dust. And I think that is healthy to have a better perspective for other players who just weren't able to have the shine because they didn't have the opportunity.
Jeff, what do you think about sabermetrics?
And it's nice to have the stats available, but one thing that I probably detest the most that sabermetrics is used for is the shift. That or they can tell where somebody's going to hit it all the time. I mean, sometimes I love it, and sometimes it takes away from the game. But it's good for the young players to have the ability to use the film that they can watch what they're doing wrong, or they can take their stats and see and improve their game. You know what I mean? It's another tool in their bag to use, but that's just one of my only complaints. I think it's a good thing to use.
And that's what Tony Gwynn did in the beginning of his career. He used video analytics, in the 80s, just to focus on his swing to become a Hall of Fame baseball player.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Earl.
You go ahead and finish that one thought.
No, it's like you said, to use, just using video, it's just another tool they use. But that's what they're doing on the Orioles right now. Like they brought him in from the I'm sorry. They brought the coaches in and the GM in from the Astros. And, hopefully they're going to improve our system. And then I thought of Pat Sajak from he said they had the one clue and it was banging on trash cans. He said, I could make a joke right now, but I'm not going to. That cracked me out, but I'm sorry. I'm done.
And Ronnie, to you, what about?
I'm not a fan of it, honestly. And I get tired of hearing about it. But I mean, I know it is useful, and I know it's with the shift, that is something that we've seen be beneficial. But at the same time, it's like, sometimes you're just over it. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it, but if it's helpful, but I think they put too much emphasis on it, and I think that they need to not use it as much.
Brandon, to you, what are your thoughts on sabermetrics?
Honestly, I think sabermetrics is a fad. I mean, as we look at it, we mentioned the shift earlier here today, but looking at the way that the game is played, when we even consider this debate of Hall of Famers, we all talk numbers. Is the way that the game's going to be played for the next 10 to 15 years, if we're truly looking at sabermetrics, are these players going to compare to the players of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and some of the numbers that they put up? Also, too, thinking really overthinking decisions. We all saw in the World Series. Could Tampa Bay be our World Series champion if Cash did not take Blake Snell out of the game? He was dealing. So in that regard, for a lot of these starting pitchers, is 300 ever going to be an achievable mark again? Are we going to have to reset benchmarks at 250? Hell, even 200 wins. True. Is that going to be the new benchmark?
Yeah, and that's definitely true. I know, and that's it's funny. We were talking about sabermetrics. and Earl Weaver was an early believer of sabermetrics. He had the index cards and doing the splits and things like that. I think sabermetrics is good to a point, but it starts going overboard. Honestly, looking at WAR, for example, is not even a consistent stat going on 3 different websites. So Baseball America, Baseball Reference, they have a different definition of how they compile WAR. So to me, the things you should go by, because in a sport where there's uneven stadiums, you go by on base percentage, you go by slugging. Those things will not change. For pitching, you go by WHIP. ERA, that again, you deal with inherited runners and things like that. But WHIP is pretty much a good determinant of a player, even though sometimes you can outperform your stats and have a great season. There's always Rick Helling, who won 20 games and had a 5 ERA, but still anomalies happen. So that's my one thing about it. And I think that it was like the NFL is the copycat league. Once they saw Billy Beane doing it, everybody started doing it. The Red Sox are basically the A's with money, and all these other teams that are doing it. When you add those things, I think really, I will say this: sabermetrics probably did help Martinez get in, even though his numbers were hampered by injuries, not being called up to the majors till he was 26, 27, and there are some people it helps, but again, I'm all for using certain stats. Other things are just ridiculous, and they aren't even worth using, but those are certain determinants. As we keep moving on, we're going to talk about the steroid era a little bit later because some of these names are going to be part of it. If you guys can give one player that you think, who either who their 10 years were up or they didn't get voted in, they got low vote totals, that should be in the Hall of Fame, and we're not counting the people who got suspended for betting. So no Pete Rose, no Joe, no NEC Cott, none of those guys. People you think should be in the Hall of Fame that didn't get their shot. I have a person, and I think a lot of people, if you guys have seen the show notes, will maybe agree, especially with some of the other things that have occurred already. Ben, how about you?
I'm probably at the risk of contradicting myself from my earlier point about 10 years, 15 years. One guy I just think got the short stick was Kenny Lofton. He was only on the ballot 1 year. He even make the requisite amount of percentages to get considered again. But, he was a different kind of guy. He reminds me a little bit of Tim Raines. We're talking about that. Those traditional leadoff guys. He was kind of in that in-between role in the 80s and 90s when just, 80s were all about stolen bases. And then as we got into the 90s and today with the power, whether it was enhanced or not and everything else, like you just didn't want to risk stealing the bases. But, Kenny Lofton was pretty dominant. I know maybe his rep got hurt a little bit just because he played with a lot of teams, but he was always good, Indians and the Braves, and he, just everywhere he played, he was good. And I was looking at his baseball reference too. I mean, it's favorable to guys again like Tim Raines, Ichiro. I mean, there's a lot of his numbers are pretty comparable, maybe a notch below. But again, if you want to argue, I mean, that's what the arguing is for. That's what the eye test will kind of help decipher again and be the ultimate decision of, is this guy a Hall of Famer or just a Hall of very good guy? So that's the only guy. I would throw out Kenny Lofton.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Therran, to you, who do you think should be in the Hall of Fame that's not on the ballot anymore, but has a good case?
Well, honestly, I don't really know too many players in this position. I guess a name that floats around every now and then, Fred McGriff, and really, I just think that he was it was kind of a model of consistency. He maintained all-star status in both the American and National Leagues. He was a part of those Braves teams that were perennial playoff contenders, and plus. I don't know. I always loved him in those Tommy Mancy commercials.
And also,
otherwise, I don't really have too much.
he was part of a good Braves team as well. I mean, a good Blue Jays team as well in the mid to late 80s. But I think the one thing is, just looking up his stats,
right.
he homers twice That was once with the Blue Jays and once with the '92 Padres. But actually, apparently he played a big role in the Blue. Well, I think he's one of the guys that played a big role in the Blue Jays, basically coming back from under 500 to winning the division in '89. So that's the one thing. And I know we're gonna say with Harold Baines in, Fred McGriff is probably one of the people that should get in over Harold Baines. Again, the Harold Baines factor, he lost a number because of part of '94, '95, but Fred McGriff is what, three to four homers away from 500, and you can't argue with that.
Yeah, I think it's a 497.
493.
493.
Yeah, and you look at that. Yeah, he could have had a good stretch in '94, early part of '95, where he could have easily got those numbers. And I mean, he sort of cratered out. Vinny, to you, who do you think should be in the Hall of Fame whose time on the ballot has passed?
Okay. I initially was going to say Gil Hodges, but not ever seeing him play. He was like too far away. I'm going to go to another player. You might know him as a certain actor, Elaine's boyfriend on Seinfeld. His name is Keith Hernandez. I honestly think he's the best defensive first baseman ever. He's also a 1979 MVP. He won 2 World Series, one with the Cards in '82 and one with the Mets in '86. He was the captain of the Mets. He was the leader of the Mets in the '80s. They rerouted plays through him. People were scared to bunt towards him, so he made changes in how defense was played. He also was able to be a consistent hitter on those really difficult New York teams with Gary Carter, with George Foster, with Darryl Strawberry. I mean, he really was the leader of those Mets. And he had a pretty good prime. The prime was there for about 12 seasons. So it's not like he fell off a cliff all like Dale Murphy. The injuries did kick him to the curb by age 35, but he still played a good, solid 15, 16 seasons. And so I don't think he ever got 5%, or if he did, he didn't get really high enough. And I wonder, with Keith Hernandez, it's surprising. And I think there's probably sabermetrics in terms of defense that really would help him. But I think as a leader too, how many people, when you think of players in the '80s, how many people say Keith Hernandez? They knew who he was. He was popular. He had the eye test. He played under scrutiny in the biggest market. And in the late '80s, were one of the few times where the Mets ran the show. It was a Mets town. New York was a Mets town. It wasn't a Yankees town. And so that's where I think that he was overlooked. And I don't know if the Veterans Committee will ever get there, but I think he would be Hall of Fame worthy in my book.
Jeff, to you, who do you think is Hall of Fame worthy that's not on the ballot anymore?
Oh, well, Therran stole mine, Fred McGriff. So I had to quickly look up a few. Mike Messina didn't make it, did he?
Oh, Mike Messina's already in. Yeah, Mike Messina is.
Yeah. So I looked up a few. I just forgot. So Clemens is already on the ballot.
Yeah, somebody who's fallen off.
So let's see. I'll just pick a name from this list since you got me, Therran. I'm going to pick one you guys probably don't know.
Sorry.
How about this? Jesse Haynes. I don't know who that is.
Is that a dead ball?
Huh?
Is he a dead ball era player?
Yeah,
he's got to be dead for 80 years or something.
I told you, Therran got me. I was ready to argue that.
He's from the old time of baseball days.
All right, Edgar Martinez.
In.
Oh, he's already.
God.
Oh, he's in.
Yeah, Edgar's in.
He's in.
God, you're killing me.
I can let you come back while you look for somebody.
All right, go ahead.
Ronnie, to you, who do you think who's not on the ballot anymore should be in the Hall of Fame?
You know what? It's really hard because you don't think about it. For instance, I didn't realize Fred McGriff wasn't in the Hall of Fame, and when you mentioned it, it's when I found out, I was like, wow, he's really not. But then again, I think he got outshadowed. He was on there with Glavine and Maddox and Smoltz and Chipper Jones. So I think he definitely was. I think that's part of the reason. I think that he was just outshadowed. And that's why I didn't realize it, because they were always focused on those guys. And Kenny Lofton was a good one, actually, because Kenny Lofton was one of my favorite players. And he, but that's a good one. But I also think of maybe Joe Carter. I know Joe Carter probably doesn't get a lot of, but he definitely had, I think he might have been close to 3,000 hits. I'm not sure, but I definitely think you could have made a case for him. I mean, and I guess when you think of Joe Carter, I know the big moment you think of is 93 World Series? I believe it was 93. But he's just one of them. But I think part of you, when you think of players, I think it doesn't come to mind because they often, like I said, get overlooked because you're on teams that, like even with Kenny Lofton, he was on all those great Cleveland teams. And I know my brother was a big Braves fan, so he and I would go back and forth because I was actually an Indians fan for a while. I mean, I still love the Orioles, but yeah, I think Joe Carter is somebody that definitely comes to mind as somebody who kind of maybe should have made it into the Hall.
Mm-hmm. Brandon, what about you?
For me, I know I'm going to open up a can of worms with this one, but for me, it starts and ends at Mark McGwire. I know what, everybody's going to say steroids, but if you take Mark McGwire out of the late 90s, baseball, I think, is dead. For what he did just in the 98 season with the home run chase coming off of the 94 strike, that single-handedly brought baseball back. So think of those couple years after the strike, baseball was hemorrhaging money. We were talking contraction of teams in that same time frame. What he did just to bring the fan back into the game in the 98 season, regardless even of the numbers that he put up. You can tell me that man lifted as much as he did. McGwire was always big. So, yes, could he have gotten a couple fly balls to go out, but some of his shots were going 500 feet no matter what happened. So as we look at it, I really think that McGwire was the scapegoat for a lot of the writers in the steroid era, because if you look at his voting totals, in year one, he got almost 25% of the vote in year one. And then every year after that, until he was off the ballot, his vote declined then. So, if we're really going to truly talk about, people that are influential to the game and deserve a spot, and he's been honest with everything that's gone on, since he's gotten out of the game, that's one to me that should be in the Hall no matter what, for what he brought back into the game.
Well, Jeff, do you have one, or are you still thinking?
Mark Bellinger.
Okay.
Mark Bellinger.
Ooh, that's good. That is good.
Oh, yeah.
Great defensive player.
Oh, yeah, Mark Bellinger, yeah.
I looked up a stat. He's got more than, give me a second, 5,786 assists and double plays as a shortstop. I mean, don't know why he was snubbed, but probably because he's a Baltimore Oriole, because we stink. But,
it could be the 228 career batting average still.
Well, that too, but,
I also think he passed away really young, so he hasn't, like those who pass away, you tend to kind of like forget about in a way. He's not around where he can really like talk about his off-the candidacy or like the interview. I don't know if that really is a struck against him, but that could be it too.
Yeah,
I think it's more because he's an Oriole.
Away in that game. He did play behind a Hall of Famer Luis Aparicio.
Hey, I have another guy.
Okay. I hope you're not going to take mine. Who you got?
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Finish. No.
My guy.
Finish.
Okay, I was about to. My guy is Albert Bell. Now I'm going to say this.
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
I was going to say you, but I thought I was going to get crucified, so I didn't say that.
I'm going to say this because he should have won the MVP in '95. There's no doubt about it. Writers hated him, but
so did Fernando Vina.
Oh yeah,
Fernando Vina. Wow.
But also, here's the thing. The other thing is this: if we're going to go by people's careers who were shortened, The other comparison to him is Kirby Puckett. And Kirby Puckett got in on this, and I don't want to slander a dead man, but he got in on a false facade because everything that you heard about Kirby Puckett after he died was no different than what Albert Bell did, probably even worse than what Albert Bell did while he was a player. And I think that Albert Bell was the most fearsome hitter in that lineup before Manny, before Tomei, before any of those guys. That order, you walked. No one would face Eddie Murray unless you had to walk Albert Bell. That's the only reason that Albert Bell was a monster in more ways than one. But I just say that Bell's a guy who should get in on a shortened career because that's something that you look back at it. Yes, he was not Mr. Personality, but like I said, we've been fooled many times. And I didn't want to slander a dead man, but that we've been fooled many times.
I just want to caveat on Albert Bell with just look up that clip on YouTube when he was with the Orioles, and I think they were playing the Angels, and he got hit by a pitch, and he didn't want to take first. He just wanted to hit again. He was so mad.
But you know what?
That's a hard. I think he homered on that next pitch.
I think he did. That just shows you he was a fierce competitor, though. I was going to say Albert Bell, but I was like, I don't want people looking at me. Because you're right, he was on that. He
retired after.
As long as you didn't say Jose Canseco,
right?
I think it was 2002 that Albert Bell retired. And he had the same amount of years as Kirby Puckett. I believe equal amount of years. It might have been 11 years. So Albert Bell retired after 2000. I mean, his career was done after 2000. He may not have retired until 04 or 05, but he was done after that. But 381 homers in 11 years, 1,726 hits in 11 years. And really, let's say 10 full, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 full years from 91 to 2000. He had 373 homers. You can't tell me that wasn't Hall of Fame
right there.
Yeah,
that's Ralph Kiner's career right there.
It is.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
It's personality, apparently.
Yeah,
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Hey, what about David Justice?
For a fun debate, Dave Stewart, I think, also deserves Hall of Fame consideration because he was a big game pitcher. If Jack Morse is in the Hall of Fame, so should Dave Stewart be in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And David Justice, I think. I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Good.
Yeah, we mentioned David Justice and Dave Stewart. I think that's a good thing. And with his passing recently, I was going to say Dick Allen. Dick Allen is a guy, again, basically the Albert Bell of his time, except you didn't really hear bad things from his teammates. And it was only the reporters and crusty old guys that era. Mm-hmm. And I think him getting traded around might have impacted his career, but honestly,
there's also a degree of prejudice and racism with Dick Allen. And yeah, like you said, like Mike Schmidt, they played together in '76 when Mike Schmidt was MVP and Dick Allen was on his way out. And Mike Schmidt, even Goose Gossage, who's like the most grumpy baseball old school player, was like, we love Dick Allen. Like he always made the clubhouse light and we enjoyed it. Like if the most grumpiest man in baseball loved Dick Allen, like he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and his numbers are comparable with Albert Bell as well. Playing from 22 to 35. I mean, really, if you look at his years, those two guys are very comparable. And unfortunately, Dick Allen got saddled with the reputation just because the writers probably didn't like him, and like you said, a level of prejudice around that time.
If I could just throw in one more, I don't want to derail us too much, but the other person I wrote down, I just want to give a shout out to is Dave Parker. There's another guy who was very consistent.
The Cobra.
Yeah, I think part of it got derailed. His reputation was pretty much sullied with the cocaine trials, and I mean, it's pretty much I mean, you would admit himself that he did drugs, and but I mean, a lot of people were doing cocaine back in the day.
Same with Keith Hernandez.
Yeah,
Hernandez, yeah.
But,
yeah,
but he was pretty dominant, and even towards the end, the twilight, when he was DHing with the A's and Milwaukee, he was still pretty scary as a hitter. Hopefully, maybe one day, hopefully soon. I know that he's not doing too well, so hopefully
he has Parkinson's.
Yeah. So, if he gets it, hopefully it'll be he'll still be alive to appreciate it. So
we'll move swiftly to the Veterans Committee picks. Ted Simmons, Marvin Miller. What were your thoughts on the selection? I know there was a few other guys who may have missed the cut, but Don Mattingly was on the list. What did you guys think about those selections? Marvin Miller and Ted Simmons.
I thought they were fine. I thought they were fine. Thanks, Earl. That's all I got. I don't really have much to say.
Mm-hmm.
Marvin Miller obviously is his impact on the game is, the game is what it is, and especially on the free agent side and all that stuff, because of him. And Ted Simmons, catchers just don't get a lot of credit. I mean, there's not a lot of them in there. He was pretty good for the time. And if you just comp catchers by themselves, he ranks up there. So,
Therran, what about you?
Well, not only was he an 8-time All-Star as a catcher, the fact that he was at least, I think he was at least a 280 career hitter as a switch hitter, while having to endure the grind of catching throughout the season. I think that's a testament to how dedicated to the game he was, because he's putting in just hella time, each side of the plate, in addition to having to work with pitching staffs and framing games together and such. Just like thinking of that from a ball player standpoint. I've never caught, but I'm aware of what it takes to be an effective and winning, I guess, all-star catcher or whatnot. And it seems he was a leader on a lot of teams a lot of those Cardinals teams that he was on throughout the bulk of his career.
Benny, what about you?
Yeah, those were great picks. Marvin Miller should have been in years ago, and he passed away, I think, maybe 10 years ago. So he was able to live to see it. He's the reason why baseball has $300 million contracts. Like Scott Boras should be going to Marvin Miller's grave every year.
I don't know if that's a good thing
for that. It's a great pick with Marvin Miller, long overdue, and then Ted Simmons. Yeah, he's one of those players who played during not Cardinals baseball. He joined right after the Bob Gibson 67-68 pennant year, and during the 70s, Lou Brock, was consistent offensive catcher, called a good game. And I think in Milwaukee he was able to make a playoff ironically against the Cardinals in '82 in the World Series. He might have played that, but I think long overdue and great, and maybe sabermetrics would have helped him. I don't know if it did or not, but he's one of those players who definitely benefited from the benefit of hindsight.
What do you think about the Veterans Committee selection? Do you agree with it? Do you think anybody else has been on there?
Can you repeat that?
Jeff, do you agree with the selections on the Veterans Committee, and would it put it on that list?
I think, I agree with it. I think Dwight Evans was a good pick. He's just as good as Gwynn and Reigns. Definitely better power.
Ronnie, what are your thoughts on that Veterans Committee list? And is there somebody among those other guys that should have gotten the vote in the Hall of Fame as well?
I think there's two picks were good. I don't know. It's just I think, kind of what everyone else is, I read what everyone else has kind of said when it comes to those two guys.
Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think both, should have been in. I think Vinny mentioned it earlier. Both should have been in way earlier. But I think when we look at what the Veterans Committee did on that side, I just don't know how you can leave Don Mattingly out. If you talk about New York baseball, late '80s, Donnie Baseball was what brought the Yankees back, and I know his career was cut short because of his injury, but Tommy John. I think you can't tell the story of the last 30 years of baseball without including Tommy John for how many guys have torn elbows or had that surgery done in the last decade and came back so much stronger. So he's maybe not for a player, but can we look at that as a contributor down the road to the game of baseball?
And it's interesting. I'm trying to pull up Tommy John's numbers. He was very close to 300 wins too. So I mean, the time he missed because of the surgery probably impacted his career. I mean, he could have gotten 300 fairly easy. I know some people will use the whole thing of compiler and all this other stuff.
He was like 46 or something. Earl? He was like up there, right?
Yeah, he was. Let me see how long he played. While we're looking at that as well, he played. He did not play in 75, but he finished 288 wins, 231 losses. That one season in 75 that he missed probably maybe cost him 12 wins. And, that could have been a huge difference there. But, I mean, the thing is he never won he finished Cy Young twice, finished second for the Cy Young twice, was only a 4-time All-Star, but the surgery is what they know him for. I will say this, Lou Whitaker, I think he gets a raw deal, especially when you're coming up, especially when you think of defensive second baseman. You're always going to think of Mazeroski. Again, you're going to think of Al, and I think that really overshadows him. But he was part of one of the best double play combos in Detroit with Alan Trammell, who's already in, who himself was a victim of came in the wrong era because you were behind Ozzie Smith and you were behind Cal Ripken, and that really hurt. And even early career Robin Yount, that could have hurt him as well. I think Lou Whitaker's a guy, and I think Mattingly, I can definitely see that, and that is a very tough thing. I mean, if Dale Murphy's career didn't just crater at the end, he has all the numbers and qualifications to be in. Now let's move on to what everybody's here for, the 2021 Hall of Fame ballot. Let's look at the people who are the newest on the ballot first before we get to everybody. Well, one of the people I was looking at, I mean, we think of this. I look at Torrey Hunter on there, his 277 batting average, 2,452 hits, 353 homers, 5-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger, 9 Gold Gloves. What do you guys think? And we'll start with Ben going that way. I mean, Torrey Hunter, do you think he's Hall of Fame worthy? And I know there's been a premium put on defense, but that's my opinion. And do you feel he has a Hall of Fame worthy moment?
I mean, it kills me to say this because I like Torrey Hunter a lot as a player, and there's I see a lot of similarities, especially in their defense, and then also just team leadership with Adam Jones. But I just don't. If I was a voter, I don't know if I could vote for him. He's just on the very good level. For all his accolades, he just wouldn't make my ballot. It would pain me, but he just wouldn't make my ballot.
I would ask this: would Jim Edmonds make your ballot? Because they are very defensively, they were very similar. But
I like Jim Edmonds. I mean, I like Jim Edmonds a lot too. I mean, obviously that catch is one of the greatest catches in baseball history. But again, just good. He's good to very good, but he's not Hall of Fame level.
Mm-hmm. Therran, your thoughts on Torrey Hunter?
I mean, good career, good solid career. Don't think he had really any.
I really appreciated watching him. Sorry.
Brandon, you can finish, and then Therran, you can go.
Oh, sorry.
Wait,
yeah.
Wait,
I might have jumped out of turn there.
My
Sorry,
turn, or
guys.
is it me? I'm sorry.
Therran, we'll go
Oh,
Brandon,
sorry,
then we'll
Brandon. Sorry. That's my fault.
Yeah, I think Torrey Hunter for me, good solid career, especially early years with the Twins, finishing up with the Angels there. Didn't really push anything over the top though, numbers wise, but solid major leaguer though.
Therran, your thoughts on Torrey Hunter?
Yeah, I agree with Brandon and Ben. I do remember I really enjoyed watching him man the outfield. I think he definitely had a Hall of Fame play, but it was in the All-Star game when he robbed the Bonds of that homer in the I think it was the top or bottom of the first inning. I think it was the bottom of the first inning because it was in Milwaukee that year. But he had a Hall of Fame play, and I guess he would have had a Hall of Fame play as a Tiger. I forget the ALCS. Was it 2013? Could someone help me out there? I know I forget who hit it, but I know he jumped. Yeah. He would have had a Hall of Fame moment had he caught that ball. But I always appreciate his effort. Yeah, that's what it was. Thank you. Yeah, always appreciate his effort. He had a hell of a glove. And speaking of that All-Star game in 2002, I think he was on his way to having an MVP type season. I think he was like amongst the leaders in home runs going into that All-Star break, because I remember he was in the Derby that year. But it didn't quite pan out to be an MVP season for him. And I think that's the closest he ever got for me, even though he remained a perennial all-star and somewhat big game player as well down the line. But as far as the hall is concerned, I don't vote him in there. No.
Benny, what do you think on Torrey Hunter?
Basically, it's very similar to Ben, Brandon, and Therran. It's Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame. He had a great career and a really solid career. Gold Gloves. He was charismatic. People knew him like baseball cards, and he played hard. But I think what really hurts him is he never went to a World Series. Like, he never had that moment. I mean, yeah, he stole the home run from Barry Bonds and created the god-awful home field advantage for the league in the All-Star game. But he never made a World Series. And I think that's one of the few things that, fairly or not, or unfairly, it does go against him. He made League Championship Series in 2002, or with I guess with the Tigers he was pretty close, like in 2013 as well, and then 2009 with the Angels he was close, but it was that's kind of like his career. He's like the Hall of Close but no cigar, and unfortunately it's kept that way. I don't know. I mean, maybe the benefit of hindsight, the defense plays a bigger factor, but I think the fact that he didn't have as big of a playoff experience, I think that cost him in the long run.
Jeff, your thoughts on Torrey Hunter?
Oh.
Jeff, you were saying, I think your mic's unmuted.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Your thoughts on Torrey Hunter?
I do not think he will go to the Hall of Fame. I think he had a great career, but I don't think he was like a Ricky Henderson type. He has some good stolen bases, good power, but he was average power, great defense. But I don't think he'll make it to the Hall of Fame.
Ronnie?
Honestly, going in, I would say yes. But then when I looked at, when I looked at his stats, I didn't realize. I really would have thought he would have more home runs. I think if he had gotten 400 home runs, and I would say definitely he was going in. And he's definitely one of my favorite players. So I would think that, but looking at his stats, I don't know if he's going to get in. His personality alone might be the push that pushes him over to get it in, because he was very personable. I think he was always smiling, and I think one of the, I guess, best images of him is that All-Star game, and he always had so much fun playing the game. But I don't know if he's going to get in with those numbers. Like I said, I really thought his numbers are bigger. So going into it, I said yes, 100%. But now looking at it, as much as I love him, I don't know if he's going to get in.
The next person I'll look on the list, and the defense, who knows? I mean, again, if Edmonds doesn't get in, I think Edmonds had a far better career. Torrey's not getting in, and I think that's, maybe a Veterans Committee down the road. You never know, because the generations will change up. But the next person I'm looking at is Mark Burley. Mark Burley is a guy that is very stealthy when you look at his numbers. He has a Hall of Fame moment, but the wins, again, this is an era where pitching wins aren't going to be there, but 214 wins and a 5-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner, but a World Series champ. I'll start this off. I think of Mark Burley. I think of two things. One, the play through the legs that he made the first, and I think of the no-hitter that surrounds the Dwayne Wise catch and the famous
perfect game.
Oh yeah, perfect game. And the Harrelson with the Hulk Harrelson call on that final. But Ben, starting off, Mark Burley, where does it go?
Great pitcher. I would have killed to have him on the Orioles in his prime or even in the twilight of his career. But good, not great. No.
Mm-hmm. Therran?
Oh man, definitely had a Hall of Fame moment with the perfect game. I thought it was a big game pitcher. Man, it's so close. I'm very tempted to give him the vote. However, I feel like the last maybe 4 or 5 seasons of his career just kind of just sort of disappeared into a blip. It's like I don't know if maybe it was age or the team, or I don't know, but it seemed like his career kind of trailed off toward the end. And where maybe during that 08 season, you're thinking, okay, this guy's knocking on the door. Toward the end, by his retirement, I was just, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, he had a solid career.
And Vinny, your thoughts?
He's sneakingly good. That's the funny part. Is he could be in the Hall of Fame 20 years from now, but I don't think he'll get elected. He's the epitome of consistency. 200 innings every year. He had innings. He had a perfect game. He had the 2005 where the White Sox rotation is probably the best rotation in our lifetimes. But yeah, he did kind of just dive down a little bit towards the end of Toronto. I think in 2015, his last year, he didn't even make the playoff roster. So I think he just had a fade, but he was sneakily good. He's a pitcher you would want to get the ball to. I just don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Jeff, your thoughts on Mark Burley?
I think yes. I don't think he's going to do it. I think maybe it'll take 5 years. 5 to 10 years before he does it.
I don't think he'll get in this year. With that, he does have a decent win percentage, so that might put him over. But I definitely don't think he's getting in this first year. Maybe in a couple years, but I don't think he'll get in the first year.
Brandon, your thoughts?
I agree with Vinny on this one. I think he's a Veterans Committee potentially down the road, because when you do compare his numbers, especially with Schilling, they're very, very comparable. I think Schilling's at 216 for wins and Burley's at 214. So I think, looking at that, obviously the big difference between the two, Schilling has the postseason heroics, to whereas Burley, just has that one World Series championship, to where, I think if you look back at the 05 Sox, John Garland was actually the top pitcher on that club. So, for that perspective, eventually numbers will get him in, but I don't think it's going to be within his 10-year window.
Next person on the ballot we're looking at for the newcomers, Tim Hudson, 222 wins, 133 losses. And, a lot of people are going to think of him as time with the A's. What say you, Ben?
It's kind of almost the exact same thing I'd say about Mark Burley. I would want him on the Orioles. Great pitcher, great person to anchor the staff. But I think his resume is even less than Burley's. I mean, he was on the star a couple times, and maybe 3 or 4 times. He pitched on some great teams, those A's teams, those Moneyball teams, and he went to Atlanta. But I just can't give him my vote.
Yeah, he actually has 1 World Series ring, 4 All-Star appearances. So he's he's nearly similar to Burley. Brand, what say you, Tim Hudson?
I'm with Ben mostly on this one. Though just thinking of those A's teams, they were pretty dominant during the regular season. And I think if I were to vote, I'll put it to you this way. I think he, Zito, and Mulder should be voted together as that sort of big 3. I feel like that's the only way that would work. Otherwise, individually, I think he finishes his career as a solid ball player. But I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like same thing. I think 2 things really hurt him. One was, his time in Oakland was short. Like, you tend to look at pitchers who stay in one place for a long time. Like the triplets in Atlanta, you had Glavine, Smoltz, and Maddox. They all stayed for at least 10 seasons together, something around there. And Mulder, Zito, and Hudson stayed together maybe 5-6 seasons tops because of the salary, salaries escalating. But I think the great thing about Hudson is he had a great second act in Atlanta. I remember he got cleated on and he lost some time and lost the season. So I think he had a great career, but I don't even think on the Veterans Committee he didn't make it because the World Series is surprising. Was it with the Giants or something? I don't remember him ever pitching in the World Series.
2014.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I thought that was Zito. I know Zito.
Yeah, he had a small role in that team.
Oh, great. Okay, happy for Hudson. But I just don't think that's the thing. Like his playoffs usually ended in the 5th game of an ALDS. So it's really hard to add that. And in baseball, you have to shine in those big moments typically. And he just didn't have the opportunity. And I don't think it's enough to the other stuff that he worked with is enough to get in Hall of Fame.
Jeff?
I don't think he's going in this year.
Ronnie?
I think he's going to be one of the players who you say, maybe he should have gone in. I don't think he's going to get in, but he'll be that player when you look back and say, oh, he was just under the, just good enough, but not good enough for the Hall of Fame. I don't think he'll get in.
Brandon?
I think he's muted.
Brandon, I think your mic's muted.
Sorry, guys. I had a great argument there, but I don't think Hudson's going to get in within his 10 years with the window. Maybe fringe on the veteran side of things. Biggest thing with Hudson, he did have a good, solid career there with Atlanta, but when you think Hall of Famers, never really finished. He had 1 year where he finished top 3 for the Cy Young. Only was a 20-game winner once. There's a lot of parallels that you might be able to draw between him and Burley, or even back to Mussina. But I think both Mussina and Burley have them in categories. But solid pitcher all around.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing with the win total starting to get depressed. I think he might make his way in just because nobody's going to get maybe 200 wins, maybe 250 wins. That might 225 might be the new 300. Looking at Barry Zito, I look at it. I was marveled by his numbers, and honestly, they are not as appealing as you really think at it when you look at it. Ben?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I think I would agree with Therran. If you just made Mulder, Tim Hudson, and Zito together, that's a Hall of Famer for sure. But that's a guy, and probably unfairly, when he signed with the Giants to that big contract, and he was only so, and then he got eclipsed by guys like Lincecum and Matt Cain and all those guys and their World Series runs. He's a good guy, He dated Alyssa Milano, so hats off to that. He's a Hall of Famer for that, but not baseball Hall of Famer.
Therran, then Vinny.
Well, to add to that, he also plays guitar. He's a songwriter, I'm pretty sure. So he'll make my cool guy Hall of Fame. But as far as his career is concerned, I think I really appreciate his craftiness. And it was cool earlier in his career how, I mean, he was throwing consistently mid-90s, and it would have been interesting to see had he been able to keep throwing the gas maybe a little deeper into his career. Maybe he would have got more wins, and maybe would have lowered his overall ERA, because I think his ERA was blown up toward the end. But no, I think I think he played the game right. But I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Vinny?
Yeah, I think Hudson has a better shot at the Hall of Fame than Zito, and I don't think either of them would make it. I mean, I think Zito has a great redemption story. Like, he signed that big contract like in 06 with the Giants, and he was their ace, and he wasn't even on the 2010 roster, and they won the World Series. But he came back in 2012. That's a very gritty performances against the Cardinals and the NLCS, and that's great. Like he has that, but he was just so good, like on that level for so little time. But he's a great surfer, so I'll give him that. He'd be a great like Keanu Reeves Point Break, / pitcher character. But
right.
I think if you combine, like we said earlier, if you combine those three pitchers and put them aggregate, yeah, they're Hall of Famers. Like, but you can't. No.
Your thoughts on Barry Zito?
No, definitely not a Hall of Famer. He only had a few great seasons, and his last season he looked like he just got shelled. So definitely not a Hall of Famer in my opinion.
Ronnie?
I don't think he's getting in. I mean, I think if he had kept on that trajectory after his, what was he with, like 23 wins, I think. If he had kept on that, and I think at that point everyone thought he was going to get in. I think if you would ask most people, because it was seemed to be a big Barry Zito phenomenon, but I just don't think he gets in because he didn't keep, he wasn't consistent for one, and I think that's kind of going to be his downfall. I mean, he did make the All-Star. Didn't I think he was All-Star? But I just don't think he's going to make it in.
Brandon, your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't think Zito ever touches the Hall of Fame 500 pitcher. At the end of the day, had one great year in 2002 where he won the Cy Young. But realistically, when you think about that A's team, he was the number 3 starter going up against everybody else's number 3. It was always Hudson, Mulder, then Zito. So, from that percent, made a lot of money in his career, but not a Hall of Famer.
And honestly, looking at some of the numbers of other guys, there's not really anybody offensively that stands out in this year's class, which might mean if none of these guys are getting in, we're going to look at the guys who are retaining on the ballot. And the first person we look at, it's going to start and end with Barry Bonds. So what's your thoughts, Ben? Here we go.
All these steroid guys, they really give me mixed feelings because and Barry Bonds is one of my favorite players of all time. I mean, him and Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, he could do it all. I mean, even before the steroids, it was just in Pittsburgh. He was great. And then whatever happened, and you can speculate what happened. And the steroid before the testing started in the mid 2000s. it was the Wild West, man. And, you know, I mean, if it wasn't technically outlawed, then, you know, there's a lot of gray area you can play with. And, you know, it's not apples to apples, but, you know, you can compare what the guys did in the 60s and 70s. People were taking greenies. There's a lot of things that are going on. And this really taints everything for the whole steroid area. Really just taints a lot of guys that I loved as a kid. So I'm really conflicted personally, but geez, this is the one I've been agonizing with. I guess at the end of the day, especially for a guy who was doing it pre-testing, and those seasons that he had, I mean, he was a video game. I mean, the home runs, you know, people, you know, getting walked with bases loaded. You know what? I would probably just say screw it, and I would probably vote him in. Is he going to get in? I don't know, but maybe if I just turned a blind eye and just said, okay, let me only count the Pittsburgh years and a couple, you know, before he was really dominant. But I'll say begrudgingly, yes, I would vote for him.
So up to 1998, because basically the rumor is that he started juicing once he saw McGuire getting all the love, and that, you know, and that's one thing. Therran?
I think Bond's baseball mind should be in the Hall alone. Like, I think, so, okay, stories of, you know, the Roy, and all right, all that aside, I really started following him in 2000. And I think that year he hit 40. What I saw that year was, I mean, definitely the best hitter in baseball. I mean, just his approach to the plate, like no one had his eye. No one could recover from, say, a bad read on the ball as quickly as he could, because his swing was just so compact and quick and directly to the ball. So there wasn't like any zone he couldn't get to. So he was, I mean, arguably the hardest out I've ever seen at bat. And in addition to, now later in his career, maybe he didn't showcase this as much, but he was a hell of an outfielder. I don't think he was the most graceful, but he could. I mean, as far as taking routes to balls, I thought he always positioned himself to make the best play out there. He didn't have the strongest arm, but he had a really accurate arm, and I think that has a lot to do with his eye, just in general. So yeah, I mean, I just think of his game like overall, and sort of thinking post playing career when he joined the Marlins as hitting instructor. He really influenced Stanton and Yelich and Ozuna at the time. I'm pretty sure. I think it's because of him that those guys became the MVP caliber type players that they became. At least, you know, Stanton and Yelich and Ozuna too. So again, that speaks to his mind, and you know, everybody know about the numbers. So when you put all that together, I mean, he has like an indelible mark on the game. I mean, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer for certain, and I feel like it's a travesty that he's not there, that he's not in there.
Mm-hmm. Benny?
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to get like everyone on consensus, but yes, I think he should be in the Hall of Fame based on his pre-1999 career. If he had a catastrophic injury in 1999 and never played a game again, he would have been a Hall of Famer just on his talent alone. All the Gold Gloves in left field, but when he played, you know, 3-time MVP in 90, 92, and 93, and he came close to winning MVP to Terry Pendleton in 91, so he could have won 4 in a row. Obviously, the video game number started in 2000, and it's kind of like earlier. I think Brandon was talking about Mark McGuire. Like, brought people like out of their seats. As a Yankees fan, I was really excited in 2002. He came to old Yankee Stadium, and it was the only time he ever went. It was an early matchup. He had a ball I've never seen hit into the right field upper deck at old Yankee Stadium. I think John Miller like famously said on the radio calls like, "But no, what is headed to New Jersey?" It's really heading towards like Connecticut, but it's okay, John.
Yeah.
But like
That was a bomb. That was a bomb.
Yeah, he brought people out of their seats. Like 50,000 people just got up. They came just for that. They could have left right after. The game could have rained out in the second inning, and people would have been satisfied. So yes, he took steroids, but he didn't. He was never. I don't want to say he was never caught into the testing at the time. So there's that whole thing. But I also think of like, this is a little biased because Willie is his godfather, but Willie Mays, when they retired Barry Bonds' number last year, 2 years ago in San Francisco, Willie Mays is 90 years old, and as much as we love Willie, we know that he doesn't have a lot of time left on this earth. And I think he like made a passionate response, like I want to see Barry Bonds go in the Hall of Fame while I'm around. And I think a lot of players, Hall of Fame players, the old guard, they hate people who take steroids, and rightfully so. But I think Willie's voice makes a big difference there. But it's hard. You're not going to get a consensus, unfortunately. He did what he did. But my God, from 2000 to 2004, he made baseball so fun.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think Barry should be. I don't want to see him in the Hall of Fame, but at the same time, on his talent alone, he'll probably get in. I mean, I read a book about him, where he went to get the steroids. They were using the transfusions. They made a whole new treatment just to treat him. And I can't remember what the name of the book's called right now. It's probably sitting on the bookshelf behind me.
Game of Shadows?
Yeah, Game of Shadows. Yeah, and they were treating Olympic athletes and everybody else with it, And I mean, one of the reasons I don't like the guy is his attitude. He was worse than Bell. Want to sign autographs. I mean, his head exploded. His head was bigger than my head. My head is like a couple feet tall. I mean, the guy was just an ass. It's his ego is what brought his downfall. I mean, it's horrible. But and McGuire's just as guilty. But one thing we have to mention is Canseco brought it all into the game. And then started crying about it because he had to write his little book. And yeah, I just can't ever see myself. If I had to vote, I would vote no on Bonds, but it would be the same thing on Clemens. I'm jumping the horse on that, but
Ronnie?
It's a tough one because he did take steroids, and that's going to always be something that's going to leave a mark. But you can't deny his numbers. I mean, he had like how many eight Gold Gloves, something like that. You don't get that many. Taking steroids is going to help you be a better outfielder. And I mean, if you take his numbers before he took steroids, they were still pretty huge. I mean, he has over 700 home runs, and it's to me, it's in a way it's sad because he for sure would be in the Hall of Fame. If you take away the steroids, he would for sure be in the Hall of Fame. But you always have to wonder, like, is that fair that he gets in when he cheated? But he had all those numbers. So I don't know. I was a Bonds fan for a while, but his attitude kind of but taking that away, he still belongs there. But it's like, is that fair for him to get in when, he did cheat? And it's like, you're supposed to go out there and win and play with sheer talent, and which he had, which is like, unfortunately, he had sheer talent. Like I said, you don't get all the MVPs you get and all that just on that. And I think he might have gotten in had he had a better attitude, because his numbers are they're astronomical. And I think when he got that, well, he always had an ego, but I think when it started to kind of take off and it really exploded, that's when he kind of pushed people away. And I think that take away that attitude, maybe they might have overlooked it and been like, he's going in the first ballot. But when you have that attitude and you're arrogant, you don't, I mean, and I guess it's the players' right not to sign autographs, but you are the fans make they come out to see you. They come in there, they not say pay your salary, but you know what I mean. So I think that I mean I don't know if I'd vote for him, but I wouldn't be that upset if he got in. But it's still it's like it's always going to be a dark cloud over it if he does get in because of what he did. So it's hard. I mean, that's a really hard one because then you go to I mean, that opens the floodgates to the rest of them get it. So that's a really tough one.
Brandon?
I think in general, what I think the Hall of Fame and the baseball writers really need to decide is with this entire group of steroid guys, are they in or are they out? I think, trying to piecemeal each single one of them is only going to drive everybody nuts as we look at this next, 10 years of inductions. Because, it's been said already that someone in the Hall of Fame use steroids. So, there's many, many guesses on who that could have been. As a Mets fan, Piazza's name's always brought up. Could have been Ricky Henderson, who was on the A's teams with McGuire and Canseco, and those guys. Pudge Rodriguez, he's been linked. So, we got to decide, I think, as we're looking at this, is it's going to be an all or nothing. I think, when you look at especially what's going on with, the Hall of Fame postponing last year's ceremony, personally, I don't think there's any chance in hell that they would ever put Bonds and Jeter in the same induction class at the end of the day. They're going to keep Jeter sterile. He's going to be the pretty boy, and that's why I think Schilling is going to be the only one to go in potentially with him just due to their rivalry this year. But as you look at the 2022 class, that opens up a whole nother can of worms because that's the last year now for both Clemens and for Bonds. It's also running out on time for Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa, and it's the first year for A-Rod. So if you're ever going to truly look at a steroid class of going in by themselves, next year is going to be that year that you can say, hey, everybody's going to go in. We're going to finally take this steroid thing, rip the Band-Aid off, and go with it. But Bonds, to the certain degree, absolutely 100%. I know he's an ass to the media, but at the end of the day, you cannot fight with what the man did on the baseball field.
And also, we forgot for next year, Ortiz is also on that ballot, and there's a lot of questions about him too. I will say this about Bonds: looking at his career average, basically they're in line with except for 01, except for 01, they were pretty much in line with his career. So, except for the walks, but other than that, his numbers are pretty much consistent across the board, except for that, as we always say in baseball, the statistical anomaly, as I call it, the Brady Anderson year. Except Barry Bonds' Brady Anderson year was 73 homers, but basically 49, 46, 45, 45, got injured, only played 5, then the next year 26, and last year 28. Those numbers are aligned, and if you look at it, it's 298, 41 homers, 108 RBIs, and that's a 162 game average over those years. So that's one thing. We were going to talk about Clemens, but basically he's in the same boat as Bonds. Let's get to Curt Schilling because that's a very dicey subject, and it's not performance that's going to get him. It's his mouth that comes up, and I think everybody. That's the big thing about Schilling. His performance, the win total. Again, late bloomer because he really didn't get a full-fledged start until 92, maybe as a starter because he was in the bullpen for a chunk of his career with Baltimore and Houston. But Schilling, Ben, what do you think? I think we lost Ben for a second, but Therran, what do you think about Curt Schilling?
Oh yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. I was saying those phrases earlier. Yeah, it's as far as if I had like a Mount Rushmore of big game pitchers that I've seen in my life, let's say honestly, Clemens is up there. Randy Johnson, Andy Pettit, Mariano Rivera, and you got the Curt Schilling there. You definitely got to add him there with the rest of those guys because yeah. If if none of y'all don't remember, just go down the archives. Go to YouTube and watch this guy. Just nerves of steel in like the biggest moments, and it's definitely something to admire. As a baseball player and just as a person.
Ben?
Yeah, this is another one that's going to pain me. Personally, I would not vote for him because of really just some of the basically everything he said since he's retired. I'm going to recognize that he's a fantastic baseball player, and probably what Therran said was just he's definitely one of the most clutch ones. I was old enough to remember that '93 Phillies team, and he was pretty much lights out from there. And of course, him teaming up with Randy Johnson to win the World Series in '01 was fantastic. And the Red Sox teams. I mean, the '04, kind of reverse the curse team. It's legendary for a lot of reasons. But again, me personally, if I had to vote, I wouldn't vote for him again because he's just become incredibly inflammatory and a lot of reasons. But I think he'll probably get in, and Brandon makes a good point. That's a good narrative to have the Red Sox and the Yankee together. I'm not particularly psyched to hear his induction speech or follow him on Twitter. I don't plan to, but I'll acknowledge that he has a good shot this year. I mean, he's at 70. I think he was at 70%. But again, if I didn't have the vote, if I had a vote, he wouldn't get my vote. But more personal thing. But I will acknowledge that he's good enough, and he will probably get in.
Vinny?
You're probably going to find very similar opinions here. As a player, absolutely. As a human being, no. Kurt Schilling as a player, amazing, and I think he has the body of work. 93 Phillies. He rubbed his teammates the wrong way with the towel on his head during the games, but he'd always throw 300 strikeouts, and then he kept it going when he joined the Diamondbacks. He ripped my heart out in '01, with Randy Johnson. He ripped my heart again in '04 with the Bloody Sock, and I think he finished his career in '07 as a World Series winner. And yeah, I mean, listen, if his first year of eligibility, I guess it would have been 2013 or something like that. And I think he was still on ESPN, and he wasn't really wrapping his mouthing off. And I think he's just a horrible human being. I can't say anything more without being very saying cursing on the stream. I think he's a reprehensible person for what he says, and I personally think he sullies the name Gehrig. I believe his Twitter is Gehrig38, and I think that's just a disgrace to Gehrig. But as a player, I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But now the question is, I'm glad I'm not a voter because there's a moral dilemma. But we know that the Hall of Fame goes back to 1936. We know Cap Banton's in the Hall of Fame. We know Ty Cobb's in the Hall of Fame. We know there are several men who are in the Hall of Fame who either through racism, maybe they were criminals, maybe they domestic abuse. There is a lot of people in the Hall of Fame who are just not good people. And so I don't know if I'm the one to say that, but I do think that the newer voters who have grown up post-civil rights era, I think we've all grown up with this ability, and I think he's crossed the line. I don't think he's getting it in the crop.
Jeff?
A PR nightmare, but yeah.
Oh.
Definitely, like Vinny said and like Ben said, he's definitely got the talent and the numbers. But from what he said over the years, I would definitely not. I would definitely not want him in because I wouldn't want him to represent baseball. But that's neither here nor there because he's probably going to get in.
Ronnie?
Well, first of all, as a person, I do not like him. I can't stand him. I think he's a horrible person, but you have to look at his numbers. I mean, in his mid 30s, he was 2 years straight. He was 45-13. So you can't deny that. And of course, when people think about him, they're going to think of his time in Arizona, winning the World Series, and then the Bloody Sock, of course. So, I mean, I was actually surprised that he got 70% votes last year. That really shocked me. I really didn't think he would get that many. So he actually might go in this year. Or like he said earlier, he might go in next year when they all go in, which he probably will get in. Personally, I wouldn't vote him in, but like I said, that's a personal thing. But if you take away his mouth and all the things he said, you can't, and I mean, you said like Ty Cobb's in. So if Ty Cobb's in, I mean, granted that was a different time, but still Ty Cobb is in. So he'll probably get in. I mean, seeing that he had 70% last year, but I wouldn't personally vote for him, but I think he's going to get in either this year or I think this year or next year when his last eligibility was next year.
Brandon?
Honestly, I think, and I think, just rehashing what everybody kind of said, terrible person, between the lines, absolute big game pitcher. As we look at where the Hall of Fame's kind of at, and I'd have to look up the history. I don't know if there's ever been a year that they've not elected a single player, especially in a year that they don't have the Veterans Committee to add on to. But with that being said, we do know that a ceremony will happen though with Larry Walker and with Jeter. So I think he's a coin flip at this moment, but I do think he's going to get in, but it's going to be by the skin of his teeth.
And the thing is, he keeps opening his mouth. It's going to be an issue. I mean, like I said, it's the guy who's going to represent that sport. I will say this, it's going to be an issue, and it's going to be something that he's going to either going to have to be a little more tight-lipped, or he's just going to end up being that crazy old uncle that nobody really likes talking about. Jumping quickly, Scott Rowland I was looking at, and honestly, that's something that can be up for debate. And looking at the numbers, I don't know why he's trending, and I'm not going to say that he shouldn't, but that's something we can hold off maybe for another time, or we can always do a little extra. Omar Vizquel, that's the guy that, we're talking about defense. His numbers with the glove are Ozzie Smith said his batting average was better, more homers than Ozzie Smith. He was a part of a lot of good Indians teams. But what say you, Ben?
He's another toughie. I think he's obviously he's known for his defense, and we talk about Hall of Fame moments. I mean, he's obviously great with that. I guess the case against him would be that he was around for a long time, so you could say, "Oh, is he a compiler?" If he wanted, and again, I just went on this whole spiel about Curt Schilling. I mean, if we want to be kind of the morals police a little bit, I mean, it's not the Hall of Nice People; it's the Hall of Fame for baseball. Choose and. We had a couple. I mean, I think there's like 4 people on this ballot who have been charged or accused of domestic issues. Unfortunately, he's a tough one. He's like right on the borderline for me. I guess if you had to put a gun in my head and just said, okay, what does your gut tell you? I would say yes. Maybe I don't know if he gets. Yeah, I mean, he's on his 4th year of eligibility, so I mean, I think he'll get it eventually. Will it be this year? I'm not sure, but I think more people will decide. More people than that will decide that he's a Hall of Famer. So,
Therran.
Yeah, I think he'll eventually get in later on down the line. I think or later on down the road. I think that's going to be primarily due to the strength of having been associated with Robbie Alomar all those years as one of the best up the middle defenses in the league for seemingly for years. But I think they were only together for maybe 4 or 5 seasons or something along those lines. Somebody can look that up for me, but it wasn't for a terribly long stretch. But for that stretch, they were very exciting to watch together. And now, as I said earlier, I do believe the ball players coming out nowadays are really talented, but as far as the emphasis on just playing fundamentally sound baseball is concerned, I'm no guru and I'm no coach, but I know what I see, and I just I love the effort put into the routine. I know the routine can be boring, but um it's effective. And I think that down the line we're gonna say that Vizquel was definitely one of the most reliable and effective ball players that we've ever seen. Just based on his commitment to playing defense, to showing up day in, day out, doing this thing on defense the way he did. So I think that effort alone should be canonized.
Vinny? Vinny?
Sorry, I wasn't sure. Were you calling?
Oh, yeah, I was calling you. Yeah.
Okay, we were talking about Omar Vizquel, right? Because I started charging my phone, so it kind of okay.
Yeah.
It's similar. Why? If I didn't read the Athletic article 3-4 weeks ago, I would say yes, because I think he was a great defensive shortstop. But it's so hard, like just reading what he has done, and I it's the same way. Like if I'm going to treat Kurt Schilling that way, I got to treat Omar Vizquel the same way. It can't be one way or another. But it's a shame because I think he had a great career similar to Kurt Schilling. I think on the field, he played 24 seasons, so 4 decades, and he was still real towards the end. And it's one of the few times I can say I guess Jose Mesa was right. He was great. He was enjoyable to watch. Venezuelan shortstop on the level. But very biased opinion, but that's where I stand on this.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'd vote him in. Like you guys said, he had great defense, showed up, great effort day in, day out. Might not have been the best offensive batter, but like we said, the defense rules all.
Ronnie?
He's another one of those people who I really thought would have been in by now. And I actually had never heard about this domestic, so that kind of changes what I feel about him because I was a huge Omar Vizquel fan. But when you look back at his career, I mean, there wasn't. If you watch SportsCenter, there wasn't a night to go by he wouldn't be on a highlight reel. So he was definitely flashy. He got game done on defense. He was a decent hitter. I mean, he wasn't great. He only had I don't even think he had 100 home runs, but he did have over 2,000 hits, and he was a part of that Cleveland Indians team that won the division a couple of times, and he went to the World Series. So I mean, I think he'll get in. It might be one of those things where he gets in at the end, along with a lot of other players that are on here. So, like I said, before I knew about the thing, I would say for sure I would vote him in. But like I said, it's not the moral whatever. So I do think he'll get in, but I just don't think I think it'll be on his last year of eligibility like everyone else. I think they're going to just kind of people like that. I think they'll let him in, but it'll be they'll let him wait it out. So he'll probably get in another 5-6 years.
Brandon?
I think Vizquel as a player, I mean, you can't argue with the defense. From 93 to 01, he was the only one that won the Gold Glove at shortstop in the American League. And even looking at his hitting stats, I know we talk about compilers, but for the last 5 years of his career, he only compiled 300 hits and he finished at 2,800. So he was still over that 2,500 for the majority of his career. Perspective, like everybody's mentioned, with his domestic violence stuff, I don't think he gets in with that being fresh. I think they do string him out for a little bit, even potentially into the veterans committee. But one day, Omar will be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the domestic violence thing is brand new to me, and until that was mentioned, I didn't know that. That's gonna, again, that's gonna be an issue. That's something that lingers with Bonds as well. That's something that, I mean, you look at all the character quirks. I mean, the Roger Clemens and Minnie McCready thing is not very kosher when you look at
that.
Yeah, that's some very iffy stuff. I mean,
Andrew Jones too. I mean, everybody. Todd Helton has a DUI. I mean, they're not perfect people. They're people. So
I mean, they're just superstars, but they can't.
Yeah.
They're humans. I know we're running out a little bit of time. What we're gonna do? There's a lot of people we glossed over. Like you mentioned, Andrew Jones, Sheffield, Sosa. I mean, Billy Wagner. But what we're gonna do is gonna go real quickly to pick your ballot. If you had a choice to pick 10 people from this ballot and who are still available, who would you go with? Ben, let's start with you real quick.
Excluding the people we already mentioned, and this was fun anyway because I didn't have my ballot actually. I would actually vote for the 3 people. Scott Rowland. I think there's a lot of potential with him. If you comp him with third baseman, he's solid outfielder. I mean, he's solid third baseman, one of the best. Could have been an Oriole, should have been an Oriole. And I think he's going to gain a little bit of momentum. Billy Wagner too. I thought solid guy. You can look at it as like per 9 strikeouts, dominant, very good. And he kind of left something in the tank. Like he's probably had a couple more years to maybe pad the stats a little bit, but he didn't. He retired early. And again, Todd. I like Todd Helton. I mean, DUI and domestic abuse aren't the same. But he's good. He was good. He was good. I mean, if you wanna ding him too for the Coors Field stuff, I mean, sure, you could do that. But then again, we got Larry Walker going in. So what does that say? So those would be the 3. Do I think they're going to make the Hall of Fame this year? No. Do I think they're going to eventually make it? I hope so. I hope. Maybe Helton might not. He might still get held back by everything, and his like peak his peak maybe not have been long enough. But I think there's a case for Billy Wagner for sure, and also for Scott Rowland.
We're gonna go do a little mix around the board. Jeff, who is your ballot consisting?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Sorry, my daughter is running around. Like Ben said, I definitely Scott Rowland. Let me see the ballot. Shut up, Brian. I would say Bobby Abreu, Andy Pettitte. Maybe, yeah, definitely those 3. Omar Vizquel, I definitely pick those 4. As far as 10, I don't know if I could pick 10. A lot of first years, and I see a few Yankees on here. I don't know if I can. I'm a little biased. Definitely a little biased on them. Kind of picking on Vinny here. Maybe Bobby Abreu.
Therran.
Yeah, like Jeff was saying, I don't know if I'll make it to 10 exactly, but I think from this conversation, we know that I'm definitely voting Bonds and Schilling, based on what I experienced as a fan alone. In Schilling's case, I guess I probably shouldn't reduce it to this, simple train of thought, but people say things, and I don't think they really speak for him as a ball player. Just taking him just what he did on the field. I'm forever grateful for the memories that he's given me as a fan. So I'm definitely with him and Bonds. We've already I've seen that guy's praises every time this time of the year comes around. He's in for me. I'd say Andy Pettitte. He made Yankees. I'd never like I never really the evil empire. Even though they were the evil empire, back in the day, I never really hated the Yankees. I always respected them. I always thought they had, at the very least, just a good idea of what team baseball is all about, and what being a team is all about. Um, and yeah, Andy Pettitte, he was definitely one of the pillars as far as that dynasty is concerned. I'd say Billy Wagner. I think it's because of him we have, GMs nowadays trying to find their Aroldis Chapmans. The evolution of just that, 90 plus just fire coming in and just closing games out. Just giving guys no shots, no chance, to react at bat. I think he was sort of the beginning of that trend of trying to find that flamethrower. So he's in. As far as any other players standing out is concerned, I think those are really the guys that I had in mind. As far as this year's ballot is concerned, but I really wish Jim Edmonds would be reconsidered because man, that guy made the game look fun to play, and man, like his stroke alone. I mean, people say Griffey had the sweetest swing in baseball, but Jim Edmonds had a really nice stroke, and I also thought he was a sound hitter, and I remember. Back when I was playing, Coach Lampman, he had brought up Edmonds' name because he was trying to he was teaching us how to hit without a stride, and that's not the easiest thing to do in baseball. A lot of guys like the stride. I guess they think they get that extra momentum when they make contact with the ball, but you don't always have to. But thinking of guys like that, I think Nomar was another guy. Without a stride. This guy had a stride, but he strode backwards, which is interesting. But Jeff Bagwell, I don't know if you guys remember him. But yeah, just thinking of Edmonds like in that regard, is just like the mechanics of hitting. I thought he made hitting look very cool. and of course, the guy, I mean, he went all out. He was all out in the outfield defensively. I mean, there wasn't any ball he couldn't track down. He had a solid arm. He made sound decisions out there. Yeah, it's a travesty that he's not in the hall either. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna go this time around.
Brandon.
All right. Well, I'm not going to get to the full 10. Obviously, we all talked Bonds and Clemens and their merits. I'm also going to go with the steroid guys as well because, I think, even though, yes, we do look at, they were able to put the ball over the fence more potentially and the semantics of it. But I think you really got to look at Manny going in as well. Just with his sheer numbers that he did put up over 2,500 hits, the 555 home runs, 1,800 RBIs. Sammy Sosa, especially as well, kind of in the same grouping as him. I think Schilling will definitely be in if I had a ballot. Also Gary Sheffield, looping those guys in with Manny and Sammy. It's really hard to argue with the 509 home runs and the 292 average over that long of a career. I also would lump in. I know we talked about him earlier, Omar Vizquel. But then my final two, kind of two outliers, really, Andrew Jones. I would absolutely say if you took the 10 years of Andrew Jones's career when he first started in Atlanta, we make comparisons to Mike Trout. Looking at truly those numbers, we forget that he burst on the scene as a 19-year-old in the World Series. His first year. So, he really did put up those numbers comparable, and his defense was second to none. I think he won the Gold Glove almost every year for a full decade there in Atlanta. And then my final one, I think, is going to be this year's Larry Walker, to where you're going to see him start to garner some support, is going to be Jeff Kent. And you look at his numbers, especially for a second baseman, in particular to his home run numbers, especially when you compare those, not only against, Ryan Sandberg, I think it is the great comparison, but, they blow Sandberg's numbers out of the water. And I know, the first part of his career, especially when, he was with the Mets, he changed his swing, and he also, did kind of change his body then as well. Could it be steroids? Could it not be steroids? But I think if you look at the parallels between him and Bonds, Kent had a good 6-7 year stretch to where, he was in the MVP conversation almost every year, putting up between 35 and 110, 120 RBIs, and really kind of, gave Bonds that protection to, for, looking at the baseball strategy, hey, if you walked Bonds, Kent was going to get you.
Ronnie, your ballot.
Well, coming into, I would have definitely had Omar Vizquel and Torrey Hunter on there. But one person that I really was surprised statistics was Bobby Abreu. Like, I didn't realize how many of the top 20, even top 10 he's in. I mean, I think he almost had a 300 batting average, and he was maybe 30 away from 3,000 hits. I think he got overlooked because of the teams he was on. I mean, I think, I remember him because I live in Philly territory. So I knew of Bobby Abreu. And then I remember him when he was with LA, with the Angels and playing the Orioles. But I never realized what big numbers he puts in. So I think he definitely did one as my pick. And I would say, as much as I hate to, I feel like some of the steroid era guys, and I like the idea that someone said earlier, have them all go in together. I feel like maybe if we're going to put them all in the same year and just them alone, because, they can be lumped in and we can have that whole, because I know some people say put them in with the asterisks, but I feel like if you put them in the same year, you just kind of put them in that same year, and we all know, there is a little bit of question with them. And so maybe if we're going to put Bonds and McGuire and even Sosa. I feel like Sosa kind of, gets overlooked, even though he's part of it. I feel like, people, when they say Sarah Aaron, they always say McGuire and Bonds and Schilling, but no one really brings up Sosa. And Sosa, I mean, when they had that the home run thing, that was such a big part of baseball. He and McGuire, and how well they, played off each other and how gracious they were. And so I think you kind of have to put that in. So if we're gonna put them in, I think it was a great idea. Put them all in together, and then just leave it at that.
My ballot, here's what I'm going. Bonds, I was thinking Bonds is going to be Bonds. So Bonds gets on my ballot. Bonds, Clemens, Sheffield. Jeff Kent, and I will go back to what Brandon was saying. The thing is, he benefited from Bonds. But then again, Matt Williams also hit behind Bonds. So that's what makes me a little iffy about Jeff Kent, because, Jeff Kent, he had some MVP caliber numbers. He's not the greatest second baseman of all time. He won't be. There's plenty of other guys ahead of him, but he's a chance to get a Hall of Famer. But he is a name, and he was part of that Astros team that went to the World Series the first time in 2005. But like I said, those guys, I don't see the appeal of Scott Rowland. I was looking at it. I thought it was more Mike Schmidt-like, or even, lower level Brooks Robinson-like. I don't know. And he was a salty reputation. Found his way, got himself traded out of St. Louis, got himself traded out of Philly, and all those things. That's why I'm sort of on the border with him. Vizquel, I know we're going to talk about that domestic violence thing, but think about it. Yeah, that if he doesn't get in, Bonds won't get in. There's a bunch of other guys in. I thought there were some rumors about Torrey Hunter. I don't know. Then, down the road, Miguel Cabrera is going to be ringing, and that's going to be pretty bad too. So if you do that for one, you're going to do that. You're going to end up doing it for all. Schilling, in his mouth, he'll get in, but I dread to see the speech that he's going to do, especially in this very tough climate. I can't go with Sosa just because, just the Capitol Hill thing. It just, You know, you see Palmeiro, you think of Schilling, you think of McGuire, you think of Sammy Sosa not knowing how to speak English. That's the thing that sticks out for me. And I mean, again, that's the situation. Andrew Jones, oh, that's another peak player where he's I would say a weird. That's a very weird like Dale Murphy type thing where he just fell off a cliff again for his career. But okay, so my ballot as I'm going off, I'm going to say Schilling, Bonds, Clemens, Vizquel, Wagner, Sheffield, Jeff Kent. That's pretty much it.
Hey, Earl, do you mind if I get my ballot in as well?
Oh yeah, Benny, I didn't want to forget you. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's basically a very quick ballot. It would be steroid era players, which would be Clemens, Bonds, and also Sheffield. I think everyone, I don't know if you could think about it, but like Sheffield had the most violent swing of anyone. He's like the guy that I thought would kill somebody like with a foul ball, especially before they extended the netting. He almost hit a home. He almost hit a foul ball out of the old Yankee Stadium. I mean, that's how violent his swing was. But 500 home runs, and I think that that should mean something. And I don't think he was never caught. So, and he didn't testify on Capitol Hill like Sammy Sosa did. So I think that's why I don't put Sammy Sosa in there. But I think Brandon talked about Jeff Kent. I think Jeff Kent should be in the Hall of Fame. A really good hitting second baseman. 2000 MVP in the National League. He played with Bonds. He and Bonds didn't get along, and it's possible if they had stayed together in 2003, they might have won a World Series together. And he hit where he went. He got traded from the world champion Blue Jays to the really crappy Rico Bronia Mets in '94. So he kept that Mets team. He got better. Went to San Francisco. He went to LA. He went to Houston. He won everywhere he went. And offensive second baseman. There's not a lot of them. So I think Jeff Kent deserves praise. And I don't know about the steroids allegations. I know he didn't get along with some players, so that could hurt him. But I think Jeff Kent. And then Bobby Abreu is like the sabermetric choice. Very sneakingly good. And what sucks is he had his career at that timing. He was on the Phillies when they sucked in the early 2000s. He was on the Yankees when they weren't winning World Series. 2009, he leaves the Yankees. Yankees win the World Series. So, maybe it was the curse of Mike Messina or the curse of Bobby Abreu. But I think those would be the 5 on the eligible list.
Again, I really appreciate you guys for being here as we wrap this up. Before we'll just go around the horn, anybody have any shout outs where people can find you? Anything going on, Ben?
Oh, well, first, like I said in the beginning, it's just nice to talk to you guys. I haven't seen a lot of you for a long time, so it was just nice to actually physically look at you guys instead of just through Facebook or social media. I do a podcast with my friends Brad and Earl's on there sometimes too, but Brad and Keith. It's called Movies a Meal. We're just, if you type it in, we're on iTunes and Stitcher and all that stuff. But so we talk about movies and other things, once a week, and we have guest stars, and any of you guys who want to join in, we'll find a place for you if you want to talk. But that's me. But again, it's good to talk to you guys, even though I'm just staring at like Therran's black screen, and for most of the time it was just his. I think it was a subtle flex. It was just his arm. I know you were flexing, Therran. I know you have guns, but
I've been trying to fix. I just gave up on it. I'm sorry.
You just want to see your bicep. I know. I see you.
Therran?
Well, in addition to the flex, it's just been great. Just talking baseball. I love talking baseball. I could talk baseball all day, all night. It's definitely one of my favorite things in life. It keeps me going. And it's good. And it's good to see you all. I haven't seen. I know I'm meeting a couple of you, the 3 of you, for the first time. So wow, welcome. I guess to the network. I enjoyed talking and was talking with you and sharing ideas with y'all, and I look forward to doing something like this again. I don't really have anything going down on social media. My name here, it's at Sparky _ McGriddle Cakes. I may have one post. I'm kind of active on Twitter. I'm at Lugots. I think that's my Twitter name, Lugots, or at Therranimal or something like that. I'm a little more active on there. I post a little more on there, just random ideas. I think I posted something earlier talking about how, if organizations are able to tank, then why can't James Harden do him? Like what's the big deal? And at the end of the day, everybody's looking out for their own skin. But that sort of thing. But yeah, otherwise, this has been a pleasure, y'all.
Vinny?
Yeah, Earl, thank you for having me on your show, and great to meet all your friends here. I guess Earl and I are Sports Jeopardy fraternity, so it's an endangered species. It's as time goes on, we're somewhere on YouTube or Crackle or something like that. If it's still around, but yeah, I appreciate it. I always enjoy it. Baseball's #1 sport in my heart. It's a lot of changes, and I don't know if it's for the best of baseball, but I think baseball's timeless, so I always appreciate it. Social media, I'm on Twitter at exit130. So that's like the exit I grew up on in New Jersey on the Parkway. I also have a YouTube channel called Cap of the Week, CAP. It's where I talk about my baseball caps. So these are the caps that were featured on today's podcast.
Very nice.
Check it out, Cap of the Week. I've not posted in quite a long time. I should probably put some more videos since I have some good cap videos. I enjoy the aesthetics of baseball caps, but my Twitter is usually more related to sports or recently politics, living in DC. But always appreciate the shout out, Earl, and thanks again for having me.
Oh yeah, I said you and Ben should do something with hats and jerseys because that.
we should have a hat off. Maybe when I get a haircut. And also tomorrow is National Cap Day, so wear your hats.
How many hats do you have?
Yeah, probably it's more than it. Honest, well, it's probably more than 200. Yeah. We're gonna hijack it a little bit, but I have. I have those Hat Club duffels. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Okay, yeah. I've got an IKEA.
And they run about 30 a piece. You can put about 30 hats in there a piece.
Nice. I have
that's probably around
it. Shelf that I rotate the hats, but it's not easy to collect. It's too many hats, but at this point, I just if you have a Boston Braves cap, hit me up. I'm looking for a Boston Braves cap.
You know what? I'll send you a DM. Maybe we can do some, depending on what our hat sizes are. But sorry, all right, it's late. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm not doing anything. Just chilling and hanging out with family.
Ronnie.
I really enjoyed today. I mean, anytime I get to talk about baseball, I don't have too many people in my life who want to talk about baseball. So anytime I can get to talk, and it was very interesting. I learned a lot. You guys are awesome, and it was very fun.
And Brandon.
Vinny and Ben, you'll be happy to know my girlfriend just said I didn't think there was people like you out there, but I might be the love child of both in the jersey and hat category. So if you guys do a jersey off, I want in.
All right.
But with that, Ben and Earl, obviously, this brings me back to the arguments that broke out in the Shorebirds press box usually somehow over the most random arguments of baseball lore and stats and what minor leaguers were going to make it to the show. I'd have to go back and if I can see any of our notes from years past to see if any of us were actually right. But with that, obviously, guys, from my perspective up here in Pittsburgh, I actually do a big charity event coming up here with the Walk for Healthy Community. So we do 7 walks across the state of Delaware and Pennsylvania to help out about 260 nonprofits. So I would just say, check that out online. I'll post a link up on my Twitter at Brandon Burns. But you can easily find that. All the money goes directly back to these organizations. Last year, even though we were virtual, we raised about $1 million for these organizations. So anything you guys could do to potentially look at that, that'd be awesome. Really enjoyed tonight. Been stuck in the house pretty much here with everything going on, but glad to be able to chat on baseball. And Earl, if you ever want me back, I'm more than happy to jump back on with you guys. But finally, with everything going on in the world, everybody on the call and everybody watching, stay safe out there, mask up, and from that perspective, have a great weekend and let's go Mets.
FAN.
Again, I really yeah, Nats fan. Therran's a Nats fan.
Nats.
All right, guys. Peace out.
Again, I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for everybody watching. We'll finish a little bit some of this stuff off the air. Again, thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate it. Thank you again. We'll talk to a lot of you guys a little bit later. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, everybody. And we'll be on sometime soon. Bye.
Okay.